When exactly can you call yourself a photographer? I am a photographer. No, really, I'm interested to know, how much experience do you think you need to call yourself a photographer? I've read a lot of comments from photographers on YouTube, and they say things like, I'm no photographer, or I'm just an amateur. And it makes me think, what is stopping so many photographers from calling themselves a photographer? It's almost like there's some sort of qualification needed. So it got me thinking, what makes you a photographer? Is it experience, enthusiasm, knowledge, the right kit? Does the creative concept behind an image, does that make you a photographer? In the same way, a conceptual artist is still an artist. You see, clients will often send a brief to me with an outline of what the message they need to say with an image is. If I read the client's brief and I create a concept for the image, which they agree ticks all of those boxes, and we shoot it, and it does the job they need it to, nobody would reasonably disagree that I was the photographer, would they? But what if I came up with that concept, and then the client asks another photographer to shoot it? Would I still be the photographer? Or would it be them, the photographer who actually pressed the button? Or could it be both of us? Is it the creative idea, the technical expertise, or the physical execution that defines who the photographer is? Maybe it's observation that allows me to be called a photographer. I was recently at the Latitude Festival, crowds of people all having a great time with live music, comedy, literary debate, politics, eating, drinking, dancing, you know what I mean. And I decided to choose 9 people from the 40,000 there to do impromptu portraits of. Yes, I just walked up to complete strangers that I thought looked interesting and asked them to pose for a portrait. I'll leave a link to that video, by the way, in the description and as a suggested video at the end of this film. So, did my observation skills make me the photographer? Was it spotting the right person that made me the photographer? Or maybe it was social skills, maybe approaching them in the right way, asking them. Perhaps that was the key skill to call myself a photographer. Or again, was it the execution, the lighting, the composition? Was it in the post-production editing? And again, there's a film on that editing, I'll leave that in the description too. But which one is it? Maybe calling yourself a photographer requires basic photographic knowledge, but maybe it requires advanced knowledge to be a photographer. Should I be proficient in all aspects of photography? Should I be able to use any camera, any lens, any light source? Well, certainly to be a professional photographer, I need to be competent in everything. But does that spill over into calling myself a photographer? Is that a name badge of honour? Does it need to be learned or earned or awarded by others? Or is it enough to simply take photos? You see, literally speaking, a photographer must be somebody who takes a photo, surely. Does it matter if they know how they did it? If they simply pointed and pressed? There can be a lot of snobbery attached to creative arts. And there are battalions of technical junkies who like nothing more than to pore over the mechanics of cameras and lenses. And some would say that an understanding of the principles of light and the mechanics of cameras and lenses are imperative to being called a real photographer. I have to say, I don't agree with that. That's not my opinion. You'll notice on my channel that I tend to focus as much on second-hand gear as new gear, and I often shoot with my cell phone if that's all I've got with me. And that's because I refuse to be elitist about photography. I've had decades enjoying shooting images, and I think everyone has the right to enjoy, even if they don't have the deepest pockets. Yet the camera companies will always be wanting the latest tech pushed out, and some of the stuff they're doing is truly amazing. I'm thinking of things like low light photography and high ISOs, lenses like the tiny 600mm on the Sony RX10 Mark IV, absolutely remarkable. But it's also worth remembering that a lot of new tech is just time-saving stuff. Faster autofocus, pet eye detection, touchscreens, all these are just time-saving, and it's nothing you can't already do manually, albeit a little slower. So in my book, photography is for everyone. And if you're interested in photography, if you read about it, if you think about it, if you genuinely love looking at photographs, even other people's photographs, then stand tall. Because even if you have nothing more than a second-hand compact camera, you are as much a photographer as the person with the latest £10,000 kit. Judge people by looking at their photos, not their equipment. And the next time somebody asks you, what you do in your spare time, what your interests are, or if you have a hobby. Take a deep breath, puff out your chest and tell them, I'm a photographer.